book he'd labored over. But first, they had another piece of writing they required from him, an official request for presidential clemency. The text, moreover, should be addressed to Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. The pro forma printout included a long blank space that the prisoner could fill out if desired, or simply, as expected, leave blank. In the formal high Russian that he had honed over 16 months imprisonment, the journal's Russia correspondent filled out the page. The last line submitted a proposal of his own. After his release, would Putin be willing to sit down for an interview? That's where we start today with the veteran journalist and co-author of the book Kremlin Rising. Susan Glasser is here. She spent 4 years in Moscow as the Washington Post's bureau chief there. She is now with The New Yorker. Also with us today, MSNBC's senior national security analyst, the former director of the CIA, John Brennan. And at the table with me, former top State Department official during the Obama administration, Rick Stengel is here. Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for being with us. Director Brennan, let me start with you. This is a very big deal, just from a logistics and negotiating perspective. What are the kind of things involved in getting a deal like this done?
Well, it's an unprecedented deal, and it is a remarkable display of very effective and successful statecraft and diplomacy by the Biden-Harris administration, because there are just so many pieces to this. As you mentioned earlier, it probably was 2 years in the making. This is the continuation of the ongoing dialogue between the United States and Russia about getting individuals released. And so I'm sure that over the course of these last many months, there have been detailed discussions that had to take place both within the United States government, because there are multiple agencies that would need to be involved, but also this orchestration across 5 or 6 other countries in terms of getting them to agree to release some prisoners, and also just to take care of the logistics about when this transfer would take place, how it would be done. And so, again, trying to understand the full coordination of this is really quite, remarkable in terms of how it was carried out, just because there are so many aspects of this that were taking place across many countries. And also, I think it just underscores the importance of these alliances that the U.S. has built up over the years, and how our global leadership really is so important and integral to be able to make actions like this come to fruition. And so therefore, again, I am just amazed. I've been involved before in bilateral exchanges with the Russians, complicated enough, but a multilateral one done in secure manner and no word of this leaked out before. It truly is a testament to, again, the professionalism of the individuals involved.
Susan Glasser, all of these prisoners, these hostages, that's what they were, are held for different reasons and different causes. The one that was most interesting to me was Vladimir Kara-Murza, who is an opposition leader for all intents and purposes. This is different from arresting somebody like Evan Gershkovich, who you expect they're going to trade for someone. This is a sort of a different calculus with Vladimir. What do you think was behind him being released?
Well, it's very powerful to see Kara-Murza in those images, actually, that you just showed us. I mean, they're the very definition of people who have been, not only held hostage, but brutalized and nearly killed in Kara-Murza's case, not only in custody, but also not once, but twice he was poisoned by Russians for the criminal act, as they saw it, of daring to oppose Vladimir Putin. Oleg Orlov is another prisoner who was released. He was the longtime leader of the human rights group Memorial in Russia. Essentially, these are Russian modern-day dissidents who the United States chose to trade for. I think it really reinforces the extent to which this is a Cold War-like situation, and Russia has become a country where even freedom of speech is a criminal act. I think it's really a bold gesture by the United States and its allies. It speaks to the idea that, Russia wants killers, murderers, and spies back, and we're working for the freedom of people who simply chose to oppose Putin's tyranny.
Rick, I want to play for you something that Secretary of State Blinken said today on the complexity. Director Brennan was referring to this, but the complexity of this deal and what he referred to as enlarging the problem set. Let's listen to him.
Took the incredible collaboration of, as you know, a number of other countries in order to do this. And so a lot went into just working with those countries to get this lined up, as well as, of course, dealing with the Russians. But could not have and would not have worked without all of these different pieces. And sometimes, in a way, enlarging the problem set is actually the key to success, and I think that was the case here.
Apologies to those people who are only getting the audio of the show. That was a little, the recording wasn't fantastic on that. But he's talking about enlarging the problem set is sometimes the key to the solution. We don't think about that. Those of us who don't negotiate things for a living think that you want to keep things to the specifics of the problem. You have a prisoner, we've got a prisoner, we want to trade. This became successful because the Biden administration reached out to other countries to say, why don't we make this a multilateral deal?
Yes, it's a paradox, Ali, but it is also an axiom in diplomacy is that if you have a small intractable problem, making it bigger sometimes solves it because there are other pieces that are working. Like maybe Slovenia wants to get rid of those two people and get someone back. And so, but as John said, I mean, this is like a three-dimensional chess problem. I mean, even the negotiations within the U.S. government are complicated. But it's a tribute, as President Biden said, to alliances, to friendships where people trust each other, where the Chancellor of Germany released an assassin, killed a German citizen on his territory because the U.S. president and the U.S. government asked him to, and because he knows that there's a reciprocity there.
Right.
That's super important. That's what the whole Biden presidency is about, and that's what's on the line now.
That's right. That's an important point. Director Brennan, there has been talk. I mean, most people are very happy to see that these hostages are released. There is always talk about whether these sorts of deals incentivize places like Russia. Most hostages held today are held by either states or state-aligned organizations. Talk to me about that. How do you think about that? Do these trades cause places like Russia to take more prisoners so that they can get more trades?
Well, these are difficult choices, and you're dealing with the reality that around the globe you have these regimes, the authoritarian regime within Moscow, that do not play by any type of international laws or rules and will resort to certain tactics in order to get their way. Now, the United States has a firm commitment to trying to make sure that our citizens are going to be kept safe and secure and can come home. And so, therefore, I'm sure that there were intensive discussions over many months in the White House Situation Room where these equities were discussed and to talk about the upsides as well as the downsides. But this issue of regimes and governments taking hostages, state-sponsored hostage taking, is something that seems to have increased. We've seen it with Iran, we've seen it with Russia, and we've seen it also involving China and other countries. And so, therefore, this is something that really requires a strategic approach to. But at the same time, I think the Biden administration felt that there was a real imperative to try to get these individuals out of harm's way in Russia. And now we're able to celebrate their release. But also, I think we have to make sure that American citizens understand that there are dangers, especially now, given the situation in Russia.
We're, of course, playing video that's been provided by Russian state TV showing the departure of those hostages, those prisoners from Russia, getting on boats, getting on buses, and then getting on the planes. It's kind of remarkable to watch, Susan. Through the course of the evening, I'm going to be speaking to a lot of people like you who have either been posted or are currently posted in Russia. What's your sense as a journalist about this? Things have become substantially more dangerous for journalists. Jason Rezaian in Iran was jailed on accusations of being a spy. That's what Evan Gershkovich faced. It's a lot harder to go overseas and be a journalist in a place that is associated with state-sponsored hostage taking.
That's exactly right, Ali. And, I should point out that for Western journalists, if it's a risk, as the Wall Street Journal found, tragically with Evan's case, of course, freedom of speech inside Russia for Russian journalists is even more extinguished. And I know so many, terrific, heroic, even independent journalists from Russia who've had to flee their own country and go into exile because they feared arrest for the simple crime of writing and reporting and speaking the truth inside their country. So it's nearly impossible now. In many ways, the situation inside Russia is worse for journalism, worse for freedom of speech than it was even in the late era of the Soviet Union. Certainly after Gorbachev came to power with his efforts to opened the society. He's ever said glasnost. It was easier to be a journalist in Russia then than it is today. Russian society has also been militarized to a large extent by Putin as a consequence, and to him as a benefit of this horrible invasion of Ukraine that he launched more than 2 years ago. And I think that, going forward, it suggests that Russia is embracing its identity as a rogue state, as an outlaw state. And I think this deal, in a way, is a sad recognition of the fact that Russia is a hostage-taking country.
Rick Stengel, I want to go back to a point you made on, and President Biden spoke to this today. He spoke very specifically to the role alliances play and why allies matter. Let's listen to what he had to say.
For anyone who questions whether allies matter, they do. They matter. And today is a powerful example of why it's vital to have friends in this world. Friends you can trust, work with, and depend upon, especially on matters of great consequence and sensitivity like this. Our alliances make our people safer, and we began to see that again today.
You had made this point. This is actually important for us to consider right now with 90 however many days to go until the election, because we do have a candidate running who doesn't believe that these alliances in particular are as important as they are. And we always think about wars and invasions and things like that, but this is one of those instances. We got some innocent people out because we have alliances.
Yeah, it's sad to me that former President Trump is so insecure, is so skeptical of this, that he thinks alliances are bad for America. He wants America to be alone. I mean, Winston Churchill once said, the only thing worse fighting with your allies is fighting without them. Right. I mean, in our case, our whole country, our whole national identity has been in part formed by those early alliances. The first one with France, a longtime one with the British, whom we fought against for our independence. I mean, this is one of the things that Biden has done, is to reinvigorate NATO, which is the greatest military alliance in history, but also reinvigorate the Western idea of promotion of democracy. To go back to what Susan was saying, I mean, that's a promotion of democracy because there are countries like Russia where the very idea of a free press is alien. Where they regard reporting as akin to espionage. I think people don't understand how alien that society is compared to ours and compared to our values. And with someone like Donald Trump, who treats Russia as sort of a pal, that's a really dangerous thing.
Director Brennan, there are still Americans who are held in Russia. There are lots of Americans, lots of people from all over the world held in a lot of countries. And this has become a very, very serious problem. As you pointed out, there has been a remarkable increase in state-sponsored taking of, again, I keep using the term hostages. It's probably not fair because they're treated as convicted prisoners, but these convictions, if you are arrested in Russia, the conviction rate is in the high 90%. You're going to go to jail, you're going to be convicted, and then you're going to be used as a political pawn. What's the institutional way to think about this as a government? How do we disincentivize this?
Well, I think, as the Biden administration has said, there is a fight right now ongoing globally in terms of democracy against authoritarianism. When you have someone like Vladimir Putin and you have individuals who lead governments and regimes, they will do whatever it is that is in their interest in terms of retaining and increasing their power. But if you're able to build up those democratic institutions and those legal institutions in countries, that is going to be the best guarantee against the abuses that we are seeing taking place on the global stage.